I'm VJ Hamilton and welcome to the Autoimmune Reset, the place for you to learn how to thrive with autoimmune disease and feel empowered to take steps to transform your health to feel better than ever. You can start making changes today to improve your health. So with every episode, my mission is to share with you simple ways to up-level your diet and lifestyle with key learnings from my own journey reversing autoimmune disease and inspirational stories from those who have reset their autoimmune symptoms and are now thriving in life. I suffered from autoimmune disease for over 25 years and now I live symptom-free, and I wish the same for you as well. So thank you for being here and sharing this time with me. Now let's get started. Hello and welcome back to the Autoimmune Reset podcast. I'm your host, VJ Hamilton. I'm a nutritionist, scientist, and expert in autoimmune disease. And today we're going to be delving into the subject of vitiligo. Vitiligo is a misunderstood condition. It is an autoimmune disease. And in today's episode, we're going to unpack the symptoms, the root causes, and most important, some of the natural therapies that may help support healing and repigmentation from a whole body perspective. And when I'm working with clients with vitiligo, what I'm thinking about first is to understand what is causing it, because it is easier to be proactive with these types of conditions to ensure that the pigmentation isn't lost in the first instance. So I'm looking at making sure that the condition isn't progressing, and that's by finding the underlying root cause. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. So let's get into it. Vitiligo is an autoimmune skin condition when the immune system mistakenly attacks melanocytes, which are these cells which are responsible for producing melanin. And that's the pigment that gives our skin, hair, and eyes their colour. And as a result, when people develop vitiligo, they will see white patches appear on different parts of their bodies. And there are two main types of vitiligo. There is the non-segmental vitiligo. This is the most common and usually is symmetrical and can be progressive as well. Then you have the segmental vitiligo, and this often starts earlier in life, and it's going to affect just one side or part of the body. With vitiligo, what I often find is clients will just discover a patch on their back or discover some white patches on their hands or some part of their skin, and it can happen quite suddenly. And sometimes it will happen after an emotional stress, it can happen after sunburn or chemical exposure. But what many people don't realize is that vitiligo is not just about the skin. It's associated with other autoimmune conditions, including thyroid disorders, especially Hashimoto's, type 1 diabetes, and even pernicious anemia. And in fact, one study from 2021 found over 20% people with vitiligo also had an underlying autoimmune thyroid dysfunction, whether diagnosed or not. And that's where testing is absolutely key, especially if you start developing signs of vitiligo, to understand what is at the root of it. And because there is this association with thyroid conditions, that might be your place to start. And you can test your thyroid hormones, you can test your TSH and any thyroid antibodies that you might have as well. So let's go deeper and look at the root cause of vitiligo and what is really causing the immune system to turn on melanocytes. Here are 5 root causes to consider. Vitiligo is often framed as a simple immune mistake, but the mechanisms are far from that and are much more intricate. So let's explore what the research tells us about why melanocytes start destructing and that can cause that pigmentation loss in the skin. The first is immune dysregulation, and vitiligo is fundamentally an autoimmune condition. And there are certain types of T cells called cytotoxic CD8 T cells, and they infiltrate the skin and specifically target melanocytes. These are the T cells and immune cells that are going to protect you when you get an infection, but actually when you have an autoimmune condition, condition, they start to attack certain areas of the body. And in this case, it's the melanocytes. And these immune cells release pro-inflammatory cytokines. So you might remember when there was COVID, there was lots of talk of the cytokine storm. And this can happen in an autoimmune condition as well, and can lead to a production of cytokines and also chemokines, which can recruit autoreactive T cells, so T cells that are destructing self-tissue and causing that damage to the skin. And a recent study showed that there is this feedback loop that happens with vitiligo, which is why understanding the root cause to help to stop the progression of the condition is absolutely key. And there are now certain medications like JAK inhibitors which are being studied as a result of this. Now, additionally, the immune response in vitiligo is often accompanied by the loss of regulatory T cells, which are also called Tregs, and they help to keep your immune system in check and ensure that your immune cell isn't targeting self-tissue. So it's not just the fact that your immune system is on hyperdrive and we have these cytotoxic T cells causing an issue at the skin barrier, but it is also that you have this loss of tolerance, and this happens with other autoimmune conditions as well. It's very similar when you look at a condition like alopecia, and a similar reaction is happening in the hair follicle. And when you have this loss of tolerance, which normally keeps your immune system in check, it means that your immune system can then start attacking the melanocytes, and that's when you see the depigmentation of your skin. Oxidative stress is a major factor in vitiligo, and melanocytes naturally produce reactive oxygen species. So oxidative stress is where you have more free radicals in the body than antioxidants, and that can happen as a result of not having enough antioxidants in your diet. But ordinarily, if you have oxidative stress, or you're in a high state of oxidative stress, there is usually more to it and there is something underlying. And these melanocytes naturally produce free radicals, these oxygen species, which is a normal part of producing energy as well. But during melanin synthesis, free radicals are produced, and under normal conditions, antioxidants like glutathione or catalase or other antioxidants would help to neutralize that. However, in vitiligo, there's often a deficiency in catalase activity, which is really key to keeping oxidative stress in check at the epidermis, so at the skin layer. And this can lead to the accumulation of hydrogen peroxide in the skin, which causes damage to the melanocyte membranes and mitochondria. And mitochondria are the powerhouse of the cells. If you're not producing enough energy, or the cells in your body are not producing enough energy, they become dysfunctional, and that can cause damage to those particular cells. And in this case, it's the melanocytes. There's also altered antigen presentation, which means that the antigens that are presented to your immune cells, so the things that are presented to your immune cells so that your immune cells start attacking that thing because it's seeing it as an invader in your body, becomes dysfunctional. And there are certain genetics that are linked to that as well. And then there can be disruption in melanin synthesis, and enzymes like tyrosinase can also be a factor as well. And a 2002 review study actually suggested that oxidative stress may precede immune activation, especially creating a danger signal that primes the immune system to attack. This danger response that can happen within the body when the cells feel that there is something wrong is one of the concepts around autoimmune disease. So if there is something going on at the cellular membrane or within the cells, that is going to send an alert to the immune system that something is wrong, and then the immune system is going to target that cell because it feels that it is causing damage in the body, and it potentially could be. There is often an underlying issue when you have an autoimmune condition. It's not just the immune system going haywire. There is more to it than that, and that's why it's always best to dig deeper to understand the root cause. Like I did in my own body, I spent so many years focused on my scalp and focused on hair growth and what are the right nutrients for hair growth. And this is all important. But the truth is I had systemic issues. And luckily for me, that came up in the fact that I got diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome, which, as much as it is linked to your brain health, it is also very much in symptoms as well, a systemic condition. It affects lots of different areas of the body. And I knew I had to work on my gut, I had to work on my energy, I had to work on my cellular health. And as a result of that, my hair grew back. And I wasn't even thinking about hair loss at that point in time because I was so exhausted with chronic fatigue syndrome. And it just shows that even though vitiligo is affecting your skin and is a skin condition, it is the underlying issues with the immune system and whatever's triggering the immune system, which is actually causing the symptoms. There are about 40 genes that have been implicated in vitiligo. There are genes related to immune regulation. There are genes related to that antioxidant response, because we know oxidative stress is such a factor here. And then there are genes related to melanocyte function and survival, which could also be linked. So if you have a genetic susceptibility and those genes are in an unfavorable environment, that is when you're more likely to develop symptoms. And remember, when it comes to vitiligo, it really is about being proactive as best as you can. Repigmentation is possible, but the truth is being proactive around it so that it doesn't spread to other areas of the body is really important. Even though there is a genetic susceptibility in vitiligo, environmental factors like stress, toxins, trauma are usually needed to trigger the onset. It's not just about your genetics. And this highlights the interaction between genes and environment and how fundamental that is. And epigenetics is an evolving area of research when it comes to your genes, when it comes to longevity. And they're finding more and more that your genes are your baseline and they are important. And I offer genetic testing in my clinic because I see the value in it and I've done it myself. But the truth is it's the environment that those genes are in. And that's how genetic testing can help, because it can flag up any variations that you have and any genetic that can make those variations worse, so you can be proactive about it. There's also nutrient deficiencies and gut issues are also seen in vitiligo, and there are several nutrient deficiencies that can compromise both melanin production and immune tolerance. And these include things like vitamin B12 and folate, which can be an issue for people, especially if you have certain genetics, because these are key for DNA methylation and T cell regulation. And DNA methylation is the way that your body protects your DNA. And if you're not methylating properly, then it may mean that your DNA can become damaged. And that's certainly not what anybody wants. And that can lead to serious issues. So making sure that we are supporting methylation is absolutely key. And there is a fine balance with methylation as well. I can do a whole other episode on methylation because it is absolutely vital for your health. As always, if there are certain areas that I mention on the podcast and you would like to find out more about them, feel free to message me. There is a way that you can message me or ask any questions by going to the show notes. You'll find it on there and you can just pop any questions over to me and I will answer those for you. Deficiencies in these key vitamins, so the vitamin B12 and folate, can impair the immune balance, and that has been linked to vitiligo in multiple studies. Zinc and copper are also cofactors of tyrosinase, and that enzyme is essential for melanin synthesis. Zinc also supports that T regulatory function, so making your immune system to stay in check, and has antioxidant activity. So making sure that you are not deficient in either of those minerals is absolutely key. And then vitamin D, which I've mentioned many times before when I've talked about other autoimmune conditions. It helps to modulate both the innate and adaptive immunity. So your first line of defense when it comes to your immune system, but also the adaptive immunity, like the T cells and the B cells, which are often out of sync when it comes to an autoimmune condition. And that can relate to both the regulatory side of the immune system, but also that cytotoxic side, the side of the immune system, which is really targeting and killing off cells or pathogens that it thinks it needs to. Vitamin D is really key for that. So if you have an autoimmune condition or you have started developing patches of vitiligo, the first thing that I recommend doing is testing your vitamin D levels and making sure they are sufficient. And I would say with an autoimmune disease, you want your vitamin D to be at a healthy level, not just above the reference range. And there is growing interest in the gut-skin immune axis, where leaky gut might contribute to loss of immune tolerance in distant tissues like the skin. And when I'm working with anybody who has skin issues, who has joint issues, who is living with fatigue, I'm going to be exploring whether there are any issues in their gut, because it does have this knock-on effect to so many other systems in the body. And then environmental triggers. We talked about the genetics, but the truth is the genetics loads the gun and the environment pulls the trigger. And it's when those genes are in a certain environment that you are more likely to develop symptoms. And chronic stress can activate the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. And this is how you control your stress. And when you're in that permanent state of fight or flight, or when you're living with chronic stress, you're more likely to have increased cortisol and altering immune surveillance. And cortisol can suppress T-reg activity while enhancing those pro-inflammatory T cells as well. And that can tip the balance towards autoimmunity. Other triggers include phenol-containing chemicals, and those are chemicals that are found in hair dye or industrial products, and that can damage melanocytes and mimic melanocyte antigens, and that can potentially induce autoimmunity in the body through a process known as molecular mimicry. If you are inhaling chemicals or putting chemicals on your skin that have a similar structure to a melanocyte, but it looks unusual to the body, then the immune system will target against that toxin once it's bound to a cell, because it targets against proteins. And what can happen is that because it's targeting against something that looks like a melanocyte, it then starts to target the melanocyte, and that is called molecular mimicry. Certain infections are also linked to vitiligo, which include H. pylori, which is a bacteria that can be found in the gut. You can test for this. Often when people have H. pylori, you'll experience reflux, and ordinarily you'd have low stomach acid, which can have a knock-on effect to other areas in the gut. It can cause small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. It can cause dysbiosis. You can get that checked by your doctor to understand whether that's a factor for you. There's also viral triggers such as Epstein-Barr virus, cytomegalovirus, that may induce post-infectious autoimmunity and immune cross-reactivity, as I was explaining, that can happen with the toxins, can happen with infections as well. So one of the most persistent myths in the vitiligo world is that you should avoid antioxidant-rich foods like blueberries. And this stems from the fact that blueberries contain a compound called hydroquinone, which is a natural depigmenting agent, which is also found in pears and used synthetically in skin bleaching products as well. However, there is no published scientific evidence showing that blueberries promotes vitiligo or worsens pigmentation loss. In fact, the opposite may be true, and blueberries are rich in anthocyanins, which may help to counteract oxidative stress, which is a known driver of vitiligo. And a mice study even showed that antioxidant-rich diets helped restore pigmentation. So if you're avoiding blueberries for that reason, then there isn't research to back it up. And actually, the antioxidants in the blueberries are going to do you more benefit than harm, because oxidative stress is a key factor in vitiligo, and we know we need to bring that down. There are lots of lovely powders that you can buy, like blueberry powders, cranberry powders, blackcurrant powders, which are a really potent source of antioxidants, and you can add that into smoothies as well as the fruit. That said, if you have salicylate or histamine intolerance, then it might be the fact you do react to these fruits. But for most people, blueberries are a skin nourishing food, not a trigger. Now, here's something fascinating that really illustrates how the body responds to chronic stress and how it might connect to conditions like vitiligo. In a 2021 study which was published from the Columbian University, discovered that psychological stress can cause human hair to turn grey, which I'm sure you're not surprised at, because often when people go through stressful periods, they will notice that they have grey hair, and it's common knowledge that this can happen. But in some cases, they have found that it can be reversed. And in this study, they analysed single hair strands from participants and mapped pigmentation patterns over time, kind of like the growth rings in a tree. And what they found was that in periods of high stress, pigmentation literally dropped off. And when stress was relieved through holidays, lifestyle changes, or emotional recovery, pigmentation returned in some cases. So let's think about what's driving this. Well, the research pointed to mitochondrial dysfunction and oxidative stress, which are key themes we see in vitiligo as well. Stress depletes cellular energy, generates reactive oxygen species, and overwhelms the antioxidant defense system of our cells, especially pigment-producing cells like melanocytes. And in both grey hair and vitiligo, melanocyte health is compromised by oxidative stress and immune dysregulation, as we've been talking about. But here's the thing, melanocytes in the hair follicles and skin respond to similar molecular stress signals like hydrogen peroxide accumulation, catalase, dysfunction, and mitochondrial imbalance. So what does this mean practically? Well, if you're seeing rapid graying or changes in skin pigmentation, especially in the context of fatigue, stress, or autoimmune issues, it might be a sign of a deeper oxidative imbalance and immune stress. And that's where functional testing can give us a bit more insight. And one of the tests that I run with many of my clients is the metabolomics test, which I also call my cell health test. And it's a comprehensive nutritional and functional analysis tool which looks at oxidative stress markers like lipid peroxides, glutathione. It also looks at nutrient levels of antioxidants. It looks for zinc, B vitamins, and CoQ10. It looks at mitochondrial metabolites and will tell us how well your cells are producing energy, and even amino acids involved in detox and tissue repair. And that is why when I'm working with clients with vitiligo, this is probably the first test I'm going to recommend, because it gives you so much insight into what is happening and whether oxidative stress or something else is a factor in their vitiligo. And I will put the link to that test in the show notes if you would like to find out more about that. So next, let's talk about how you can take a natural approach to supporting your health and managing symptoms of vitiligo. Well, the first is eating an antioxidant-rich diet. A diet rich in polyphenols and antioxidants, which are included in colourful fruits and vegetables, can support oxidative balance. Green tea extract, pomegranate, and turmeric have also all been shown to have potential benefits in clinical trials. And I know when I'm working with clients who start including matcha and they start snacking on pomegranates and they bring in those antioxidant rich powders, they see a noticeable difference in their symptoms. You can also use supplements to help to address any nutrient deficiencies, and that is the key. It's about nutrient deficiencies. Just by loading up on these vitamins isn't going to help. You need to understand what nutrient deficiencies you have, why they are occurring, and then address them. But zinc and copper, as I mentioned, are absolutely key to melanocyte production. When they are low, it means that your melanocytes may become dysfunctional. So checking your zinc and copper levels and then supplementing them if you need to, or seeking out zinc and copper rich foods. You can even use copper pans, and that can help to increase copper levels in the body. Vitamin B12 and folate are especially important. You can check your homocysteine levels, because if your homocysteine levels are high, then it means that you might have an underlying deficiency in vitamin B12 and folate. And unfortunately, with vitamin B12 and folate, it's not as straightforward as just testing the levels in your blood. You need to understand whether you have a functional deficiency, and that's where testing like the metabolomics is going to give you that insight, because some people will be absorbing the vitamin B12 and folate from the gut, but because of the form that it's in, their cells aren't able to use it. and that's when you need to consider a different type of supplement or eating foods with a different type of B12 or folate, which is going to be more readily absorbable by your body and your cells. And then vitamin D as well, and just making sure in the summertime you are getting some sunlight exposure, and the more skin that is exposed, the more likely you are to get the vitamin D benefit. And one small study combining B12, folate and sun exposure showed a partial repigmentation in over 60% of participants in that study. We can't forget about the gut and liver, and considering addressing dysbiosis, leaky gut, and improving sluggish liver pathways can be extremely helpful. You can support digestion and detox to help reduce that autoimmune burden, and this might include things like L-glutamine, which can help with leaky gut. Bringing in some gut-friendly foods like prebiotics, high-fiber foods, polyphenols again is going to really help to strengthen the gut function, and then liver support. I'm really loving parsley at the moment, bringing in parsley in salads like tabbouleh, having parsley tea. It's so supportive of those detox pathways and can help with a sluggish detox function. And then there is low-level light therapy and narrowband UVB, and red light therapy and narrowband UVB remain among the most evidence-based treatments for repigmentation, especially when combined with nutritional support. And lastly, stress reduction and nervous system support is absolutely key. You can use mind-body tools like EFT tapping if you feel that emotional trauma is an issue. What can happen with emotional trauma is it can rewire your stress response, so you're in that heightened state of stress. Even with small stress exposures, that's when trauma therapy could be beneficial. And I love just simple lifestyle practices like journaling, deep breathing, meditation, going out for walks in nature. One of the tools that I have introduced to my daily life in recent months, well, it's been over 6 months now, is I started using a NeuroSim, and it's the way that I find the most calmness in my day. I will use it either in 2 30-minute sessions or an hour session. I just find it very easy to bring into my daily life, even when I've got a lot going on. And it can help to calm the nervous system. It helps to improve vagal tone, which is so key for our gut health, for our immune system, for our emotional health, for our brain health. I'll link to the NeuroSim in the show notes if you want to find out more, but you can even splash cold water on your face. That can help with vagal tone. Cold plunging can help with vagal tone. Humming and singing helps with vagal tone. So there's lots of ways that you can do it naturally as well. When it comes to vitiligo, it is not just about focusing on the skin. It is about focusing on all the systems in the body. So whether you're looking for symptom relief, prevention of progression, or even repigmentation, there are powerful tools available to you. If you have any questions about this, then feel free to pop over to my Instagram account at the Autoimmune Nutritionist, and I can answer any questions over there. Or feel free to join my free group, the Autoimmune Forum. If not, have a fantastic rest of your weekend, and I will be in touch soon. Take care. Thank you very much for joining me today on the Autoimmune Reset. I really hope you enjoyed the discussion, and be sure to subscribe to the podcast so that you never miss an episode. And if you liked it, I would hugely appreciate a review on iTunes, as it helps me understand what you like about the podcast and to help share the information with more people. I'm excited to speak to you next time, and remember, you have the power to take the reins on your health. So keep the faith and celebrate the small wins. Until next time.